Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In today's episode, all three stories are about different political parties. We will talk about the Congress party and the leaders within it who want to reform it. We will also talk about how, amid a power struggle within the ruling Nepal Communist Party, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli dissolved the House of Representatives. But first, we talk about the BJP and TMC. On Saturday, 10 MLAs, an MP, and former MP of the Trinamool Congress, that is the TMC, joined the Bharatiya Janata Party. This came as a jolt to the TMC, which is the ruling party in West Bengal, where assembly elections are due next summer and where BJP has been trying to make inroads for some time now. In the recent past, the two parties have clashed on a number of issues, including the COVID-19 management, and things have even gotten violent between the local party members on a number of occasions. Now, among the people who have deserted TMC for the BJP is the MLA, former state minister and political heavyweight Suvendu Adhikari. When we spoke to Atri Mitra, who reports on West Bengal for the Indian Express about this, he explains that Adhikari's desertion will hit TMC hard. But the party is spinning the loss of other members differently. He explains how.
The quit of Suvendu Adhikari is no doubt a great loss for TMC because Suvendu Adhikari is a very good organizer and a stronghold in some districts, especially in western part of the South Bengal, commonly known as Jungle Mahal. He has a good organized force in that area, but other leaders, those who are quitting the party, many of them has corruption charges and also became unpopular in their area. So one section of the TMC leaders thought that this exodus will increase the credibility of the party.
Though, when talking about the reason why these members, including Adhikari, quit TMC, Autry says that the problem actually began in 2014 after the Lok Sabha elections. That is when Abhishek Banerjee, the nephew of Chief Minister Mamta Banerjee, became the Member of Parliament from the Diamond Harbour constituency.
And slowly he became the second man of the party on 2015, 2016, and 2016 assembly election. Mamta Banerjee almost announced that he will be the next supremo of the party.
He says that is when Mukul Roy, who was a senior member of the TMC, quit the party because he couldn't bear Abhishek Banerjee going above him in the party, especially considering Roy had been in the party since the beginning and had contributed in a major way to make TMC the second biggest party in the state after the CPM. Upon quitting, he had said that we are comrades in party and not servants, and that dynasty politics is hurting all political parties in the country. Roy is now BJP's national vice president. And Autry says that Suvendu Adhikari's reason to quit is similar to that of Mukul Roy. And he too has contributed a lot to the party and was a big reason that Mamta Banerjee came to power in West Bengal in 2011.
So these senior leaders, Subrata Mukherjee, Mukul Rai, Suvendu Adhikari, these senior leaders can't take Abhishek Banerjee as supremo in the place or in the second place behind Mamata Banerjee or in the place of Mamata Banerjee. So this is the main thing. Yesterday's meeting also, Amit Shah, Suvendu Adhikari also, Rahul Sinha, one of the senior BJP leader, mentioned that Suvendu in touch with BJP from 2016 onwards.
2016, as mentioned before, was when Abhishek Banerjee, Mamta Banerjee's nephew, became an MP.
And because of that, Suvendu Adhikari, who has the aspiration that he will be the second man at the TMC, when Abhishek Banerjee came in that place, then Suvendu decided to quit the party. That is the main reason. And obviously, Suvendu has the aspiration of he will become the main politician in West Bengal. He will be the chief minister. He has the credibility to become chief minister. So he now has the aspiration to go some national party to have greater role or become a bigger figure in West Bengal politics.
On Saturday, Home Minister Amit Shah had been present in the public meeting when the TMC deserters joined BJP. And in his speech, he had mentioned Mamta Banerjee's nephew. He said, quote, "The future of 10 crore Bengalis, the future of crores of youth is not on her mind. She only thinks about when she can make her nephew the chief minister."
ये 10 करोड़ बंगाली लोगों का भविष्य आपको नहीं दिखाई पड़ता है। ये करोड़ों युवाओं का भविष्य आपको नहीं दिखाई पड़ता है। आपकी नजर में अपना भतीजा है, कब इसको मुख्यमंत्री बना दे, कब इसको मुख्यमंत्री बना दे।
Atri says that right now, history is repeating itself in the state. He explains that TMC had not come to power in the state because it was a popular party. He says that it had come to power because people of the state had voted against the CPM.
Again in 2021, that is again going to happen. One section of people are grudge against TMC, corruption of TMC, law and order situation of West Bengal. So TMC became unpopular. They are going to vote for the BJP. So BJP also trying to capitalize that negative part of the TMC, and you can see both Amit Shah, Suvendu Adhikari, they are hitting that point of TMC, how TMC is most corrupted party, how TMC is stealing the central money, TMC leaders are stealing the central money, how Bhaipo, nephew of Mamata Banerjee, doing tolabaji and other things, gundagardi, tolabaji, and they are mentioning that.
One of the most popular slogans of the TMC has been Ma, Mamta and Manush, meaning mother, motherland and people. During his address on Saturday, Amit Shah said that Mamta Banerjee has changed the slogan to Tolbazi, Tushtikaran and Bhatijawad. That is extortion, appeasement and nepotism.
नारा किसी भी पार्टी का हो बुरा नहीं होता, मगर आपने क्या करा? मां, माटी, मानुष के नारे को तोलबाजी, तुष्टीकरण और भतीजावाद में परिवर्तित कर दिया।
Getting Suvendu Adhikari into the party is also a big win for the BJP because the party has no big leaders in the state. Though the other thing that Atri points out is that while they may induct populist leaders like Adhikari into their party, when it comes to picking chief ministers, the BJP almost always ends up choosing someone who is loyal to the RSS ideology.
Like they make chief minister in Yogi Adityanath in UP, Biplab Dev in Tripura. Those are not very popular leaders in their state, but they are very loyal to RSS. They are strong RSS men. So BJP leaders are saying we don't need strong leaders. We need strong party men, strong organizer, and we will choose among them chief minister. But they are saying that Suvendu Adhikari or like these popular leader who are coming from TMC, they will not be chief minister or number one figure in West Bengal.
So Suvendu Adhikari's induction into the party might be more of a gain for BJP than it might be for him, at least when it comes to the personal political ambitions that he might have. Meanwhile, to fight against the BJP's tactics, Atri says that the TMC is emphasizing on three things. The first one being the development and popular plans that the party has implemented in the past 9 years. And the second thing that the party says is that the BJP does not know enough about Bengali culture and will ruin its heritage.
They don't know about Rabindranath Tagore. They don't know about Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. They don't know about Michael Madhusudan Datto. They don't know about Kazi Nazrul Islam. So the huge cultural heritage Bengalis have, they are attacking on that point. If BJP will came in Bengal, they will introduce the Hindi culture, not Bengali culture. They are outsider. They don't know about Bengali culture. That is also a major campaign point of TMC.
And apart from development and culture, Atri says that the TMC is also stressing on BJP's policies at the center.
You know that Mamata Banerjee recently held different rallies and she also campaigned against the farm policy when the farmers came in Haryana border and Rajasthan border in Delhi. Mamata Banerjee also said that if possible, I will go to Haryana border and sit with the farmers. So basically, they are also campaigning against the central policy. Mamata Banerjee already held movement against NRC also before COVID situation. So they are basically three things they are capitalizing. One, their development. They did those development and populist program last 9 years. Second is that they are campaigning that BJP will ruin the culture of the Bengalis. They will introduce the Hindi culture in West Bengal. And third is they are campaigning against the central policy.
As mentioned earlier, the assembly elections in the state are scheduled for next year, and we'll have to wait and see to what extent BJP is able to hurt the TMC and gain seats in the state. Now, one factor that will also play a role in the elections is how people perceive the clash between the two parties. And Atri says that if people perceive that any one party is fueling violent clashes in the state, then that could very well work against that party. Dear listeners, before we move on to the rest of the show, I just wanted your quick attention. One of the big reasons people say they like this show is because it helps them understand the news better. It provides them with the context they need to see the bigger picture. And there is perhaps no other place that does that better than Indian Express's Explained section. We on Three Things refer to the section regularly, and it helps us make this show. If you're a regular reader of Indian Express, you know how useful the Explained section can be, especially when you're looking for in-depth analysis by the right experts. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explained and access the coverage 24/7. Explained by Indian Express, where news that matters is explained by experts who know the subject. Now, back to the show. And next, we talk about the Congress party and how some leaders within the party are demanding reforms from its top leadership. It was back in August that 23 leaders from the Congress party, including Ghulam Nabi Azad, Anand Sharma, Manish Tiwari, Prithviraj Chauhan, and Shashi Tharoor, had, in an unprecedented pushback, sent a letter to the party chief Sonia Gandhi calling for major changes in the party.
Primarily, the most important suggestion or demand that these 23 leaders had made then was that the party should have a full-time and effective leadership, which is both visible and active in the field.
That's Manoj CG. He writes on the Congress for the Indian Express.
And they wanted elections to the Congress Working Committee, establishment of an institutional leadership mechanism to collectively guide the party's revival. The institutional leadership mechanism, by that they meant re-establishment of the concept of parliamentary board. There used to be a body called parliamentary board in the Congress earlier, but over the last 20-25 years, that's not a functional kind of a body. It was discontinued. Then the letter had also called for, decentralization of power, empowerment of state units, election to the Congress organization at all levels, right from the lowest level, which is the bloc, up to the CWC. Then there were concerns. They said, this uncertainty of the leadership and the drift in the party, that is having a demoralizing effect on workers. Even the meetings of the CWC, which is the highest policy and decision-making body of the party, they felt were merely episodic and convened, in reaction to political developments. Not that it is meeting regularly, say once in 3 months or something, to give a meaningful direction to the party. The CWC, they felt, is being convened whenever there is a big political development to kind of formulate the party's position. So even the Congress Parliamentary Party, which is the parliamentary wing of the party, it is not a real deliberative anymore, they felt.
These 23 leaders, he says, wanted to inject vigor into the party and have elections at all levels, including the Congress Working Committee. Immediately after the letter came out, Indian Express had also published the contents of the letter. Manoj says that the letter had caused a huge uproar in the party. The 23 leaders, which included 5 former chief ministers, sitting MPs, and several former union ministers, were said to be going against the Gandhi family.
So 2 days later, the Congress Working Committee met, which was where the contents of the letter was not at all discussed. The intent of these 23 leaders were rather questioned. What prompted them to write this letter, how it came out, all those happened, but the contents of the letter, the spirit was not discussed, after which member after member pledged loyalty to the Gandhis and the matter ended there. So these 23 leaders were really disappointed. They were called dissenters, rebels, but they themselves tried to call themselves, as reformist. They say we are reformist, we are seeking reforms in the party. So that's where it stood in August.
This was the time when the country was just coming out of the lockdown. And Manoj points out that after that, while there were a few virtual meetings that took place, one of them to mourn the death of the senior party leader Mr. Ahmed Patel, a face-to-face meeting of the Congress could not take place. But that changed on Saturday, when a 5-hour-long face-to-face meeting of the party took place that included Sonia Gandhi and the core team of the 23 leaders who had written the letter, and who are now called the G23.
This was the first meaningful effort from the part of the Congress president and from the part of these 23 leaders. It was the first meaningful reconciliation effort by both the sides.
The 23 letter writers were represented by 7 people. That included Ghulam Nabi Azad, Anand Sharma, Manish Tiwari, Prithviraj Chauhan, Vivek Tankha, Shashi Tharoor, and Bhupender Singh Hooda.
From the other side, I don't know whether it's right to call the other side, but there was Congress President, Rahul Gandhi was there, Priyanka Gandhi, ACC General Secretary, Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot was there, and senior leaders like A.K. Antony, Harish Rawat, Ambika Soni, Ajay Makan, they were all there. So that was the backdrop of this meeting. It was interesting because this was the first meeting where both the sides came face to face after that August letter. And the rank was CWC meeting 2 days later.
This meeting, leaders told Manoj, was essentially an ice-breaking session where the two sides could sit and actually talk about the issues, as opposed to being in denial about it like the party was back in August.
The party was saying, organizationally, there are no issues. These people, these 23 leaders have written this letter and this letter has come out. They questioned the motive, the intent. The party was in complete denial. So this meeting where representatives of these 23 leaders were present, they were sitting face to face with the Congress president and were talking itself, the letter writers believe, is a recognition of the concerns they had raised. So in a way, the ice was broken. There is now an institutional mechanism where the internal dialogue can take place outside of the Congress Working Committee. But during the 5-hour meeting, every leader spoke. The letter writers remained firm on their demand that there should be internal elections at all levels. There should be establishment of a parliamentary board which can bring in a collective leadership mechanism.
During the meeting, leaders also talked about Rahul Gandhi. You might remember that back in July last year, Gandhi had resigned as the party president without naming a successor, and later Sonia Gandhi became the interim party chief. Now, in this meeting, Manoj says, there were leaders not from the letter writer's side, but like Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot, Mr. A.K. Antony, and Ajay Makan, who asked Rahul Gandhi to come back and take charge of the Congress. But Rahul Gandhi did not give them any assurances.
He merely told them that the process of election for the post of Congress president has already begun. So let's wait for that. So it was essentially where both the sides reiterated their positions, but resumption of the dialogue process has begun. The only key takeaway could be that when Manish Tiwari, one of the letter writers, suggested that the party should now think of convening a Chintan Shivir, a brainstorming session like the ones which are held in Pachmadi in 1998 and Shimla in 2003, the Congress president immediately accepted that. She said once this COVID protocols and the COVID situation eases, the party can think of holding a Chintan Shivir for a wider and deeper brainstorming.
When we talk about the demand of the letter writers, Manoj points out that the Congress constitution itself talks about many of them, including, for example, election to the Congress Working Committee. Like the party's constitution says that 12 members of the Congress Working Committee will be elected by delegates of the All India Congress Committee.
But the last election, we all know, was held in 1996. In 1998, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi took over as the Congress president, and since then, there has been no elections for the Congress Working Committee. The members have always been nominated by the Congress president. So the Congress president has the liberty to pick whosoever she wants as a CWC member. Now, interestingly, many of these letter writers have enjoyed the confidence of the Congress president and had been nominated to the working committee many times. Some of them are still are members of the working committee because they are dominated by the Congress president. But now they feel that election should be held, which is a provision in the Congress working committee itself. And even the parliamentary board, it is a provision in the Congress constitution. And elections at all levels, from block to district to state, all these are there in the Congress constitution. The only thing the party will have to do is to operationalize its own constitution in that sense.
Right now, the party is facing multiple issues, including that of staying relevant and losing its voter base. Plus, Manoj says that they also need to get its messaging right and work on the narrative that it wants to set.
Whether it wants to be a party which is perpetually criticizing the government, reacting to whatever the ruling party is saying, or put forth an alternative narrative, and it will have to set right or think about whether the messaging that is emanating from the Congress is convincing, whether it's appealing to the people. So I believe there are 3-4 aspects which the party will have to look at. One is, as I said, the narrative, the messaging. Of course, then the organizational part also is important, because in many states where the party had not been in power for long, the organization is very weak. In the sense, if you look at Tamil Nadu, the party had been out of power in Tamil Nadu for like 50 years. Uttar Pradesh, case of Odisha. So there are many states where the party's organization is really weak.
And this is something that the party would really have to work on. And at least when it comes to this aspect, the letter writers point out that having internal elections would actually help. They say that it will build a competitive spirit within the party.
So Mr. Azad had given the Indian Express an interview last month where he said what really happens is that if one person is appointed as a bloc president, nominated from Delhi, the other aspirants, they will just sit quiet or they will start sulking. Whereas if there is an election where everybody contests and the person with the largest number of votes, he wins, the other person will have no grudge in that sense that he is more popular than the person elected. That kind of complaints will not be there. It was put to test, and the person who became the bloc president has the support of the party unit there. So that is one of the suggestions to energize, to galvanize the party. But Congress party being a 135-year-old party, things move in a very, very slow pace in the party.
One other thing that many have pointed out is that in order for the Congress party to truly reform, the Gandhis should leave the party altogether. But is this an opinion shared by those within the party as well, like the letter writers? Manoj says that this is something that is not actively discussed in the Congress.
Both the sides argue according to what suits them. In the sense, it's not that there never been a president in the Congress outside of the Gandhi family. In the last 20 years or the last 30 years, the experience may be different. But even after independence, for a longer duration of the time, the Congress never had a Gandhi as a president, a person from the Nehru Gandhi family as a president. It's a recent phenomenon. So there is this one argument that only a person from the Gandhi family can hold the party together. The party will disintegrate if a third person comes to the post. Examples like the split which happened when P.V. Narasimha Rao was the president of the Congress party in the early 90s and Sitaram Kesari as the president of the Congress party from 96 to 98, that examples are given. On the other side, some leaders believe it's time perhaps for a non-Gandhi to step in, because this perception, this widespread perception that Congress has become a dynasty-driven party, that can be addressed. But even many of the leaders of this G23, many of them are not suggesting that a non-Gandhi should come as president. The fact of the matter is there was an apprehension that Sonia Gandhi wants to step down as Congress president. Rahul is not keen. And a third person who could be a loyalist, perhaps a lightweight or a loyalist, rubber stamp kind of a president could be appointed. That was one of the primary reasons for these leaders to step in and write that letter. That is one belief in the Congress party. So even they suggest that even if Rahul Gandhi is to return as a Congress president, the present functioning of the party doesn't inspire any confidence. It is not about a person, it's about a system, it's about a mechanism. So you'll have to make these changes. Let Rahul Gandhi take over as the president, but the party should be energized. There should be collective leadership. So these are the reform ideas that they have suggested. So the question of whether a Gandhi should continue or not is not really at the center of the debate in Congress as it is outside.
And in the end, we talk about Nepal. Yesterday, Prime Minister of Nepal, KP Sharma Oli, dissolved the House of Representatives, which is Nepal's lower house, and announced that general elections would be held in April and May, more than a year ahead of schedule. This move comes at a time when a power struggle is going on within the ruling Nepal Communist Party, and when an opponent faction led by leaders like Pushpa Kamal Dahal are demanding for PM Oli's resignation. It is also important to note that Oli has lost the majority in crucial bodies in the party, and opposition MPs have been contemplating moving impeachment motion against the president, which cannot happen now because of the dissolution of the House. Legal and political experts, however, call the sudden move unconstitutional. Dr. Bhim Arjunacharya, a noted constitutional lawyer, said that it's a coup on the constitution by the executive head. Senior leaders in the party also believe that this will lead to expulsion and counter-expulsion of leaders, followed by a split soon. There are also chances of the decision being challenged in the court. Meanwhile, protests have erupted in various parts of the country, including the capital, where security has been tightened. You were listening to Three Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and as always was edited and mixed by our producer, Joshua Thomas. Before we go, here's another reminder to check out Indian Express's Explain section. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explain and find in-depth analysis by the right experts. It has everything you need to know to understand the news better and see the bigger picture. If you like this show, then you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.